Welcome back, everybody, to episode 5 of Couch Coaches. I'm Bully, and you are?
Coach Gully
How's it going, Coach? How was your fourth?
is fantastic.
You still got
It,
all your fingers?
I do. They're all right here. So
No Jason Pierre-Paul here today.
exactly.
Um, Someone didn't have a very good fourth in Minnesota, and that was the Vikings cornerback, Kyrie Jackson. Unfortunately, lost his life in a tragic accident. We just wish his
Mm-hmm.
family the best. But positive
Absolutely.
news came out of Minnesota as well, with Jose Miranda matching a 72-year-old batting record of 12 consecutive hits in a row.
Very
How about
impressive.
how about that? And it was, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he was just foul on his 13th hit to stand alone at the top and fly it out. But props to that guy. What a fantastic little run he had.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a pretty amazing feat, that's for sure. Uh, in modern baseball, usually, you know, usually they don't come to those old time records very often.
Yeah.
So it is pretty. I think it was actually a pretty special thing that he did there.
And it's kind of unique from the Minnesota side that it's a player for us instead of against us. That's happened in a lot of
Yeah,
history as well.
absolutely. It'll be awesome, see the replays in the future and actually see it be a positive thing versus, like Vikings D back chasing after a running back going towards the end zone.
Right, or the
So
Freeman catch on Monday Night Football. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Twins news though. Correa made the All Star game. Huh? A little
he
applause
did.
to him.
Absolutely.
But I know you're a little not so happy that some other players didn't make the roster.
Uh yes, I am pretty salty about that. I think well, we have the fourth best record in the American League, and all we could muster is Correa. Now, granted, Correa has been very hot, especially in the month of June, which is probably the best time to do it if you want to play in the All Star game. But um, along with that, I really think that we had our catcher Jeffers. I think he should have been on the roster just because of how well he's been hitting, how well he's been playing defensively. He leads our team in RBIs, leads it in home runs. I don't know. I really think Jeffers should have made the All Star team as well.
Now you may know this more than I do. You pay a little bit more attention to baseball. Do they still do that? You have to have one representative for every team now, or are they just selecting by overall votes?
That is a great question. Um, I don't think that they do necessarily. I know like in the yeah, no, I don't think that they do, but I could be completely wrong.
I thought they had changed it that they took away one from every team now just to create the best player rosters
Well, yeah, you
that
got
were
to
more
figure
deserving.
a baseball roster is what 25 players, and I think it expands in September. Um, and there's what 30 some odd. Well, I suppose in each division it's only like 15 or 16 teams in each division. So, or excuse me, yeah, in
Yeah,
either
yeah, about
AL
15 or something like
or
that. So,
NL.
yeah, I mean, they could still make it. I can't remember what team had it, but there was like four starters from one team, whether it was in the AL or NL. Again, not so into the baseball realm of it, and but to have a handful of starters or like the entire infield or something from one team was pretty unique. So,
Yeah.
but I think they should take the best players available instead of just well, we have to send somebody and you guys are dog piss, but here you go,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm not
Hey,
a
you're
big
the
fan
one
of
who
that.
sucks
Right.
the least on our team.
Right. Here's a nod. Right. Put that on your resume. I mean, it's almost just as bad as being a fill-in Pro Bowler for the NFL because 8 people are
Oh
not
yeah,
playing anymore, and now all of a sudden you call Teddy Bridgewater a Pro Bowler in his career. I'm like, come on, man. Guy wets the bed more than he. Well, never mind.
Yeah, tell me how you really feel. But um, no, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, especially in football. I mean, those guys by the end of the season, they're so beat up. They don't want to. They don't really want to play the game. At least not most of them. You know.
Well, there's just
But,
nothing meaningful behind the Pro Bowl. As baseball, maybe they still do, or maybe they don't. But it used to be the winner of, or the Pro Bowl, the baseball, the winner of the All Star game gets home
yeah, it's
in
still
the
that way.
World Series.
Yep.
The football, there's nothing in it. It's at the end of the season. You can't really do it in the middle of the season. No one's going to play to try to get hurt. Even though back in the 90s, these guys played some pretty good Pro Bowl games. They were pretty physical, and that was fun to watch.
Yep.
And then one person can get injured and just ruin the fun for everyone else. And now it's just a skills game, which is okay, but it just doesn't have the same effect anymore.
Yeah, I kind of like the new format. I think it's kind of I think it's kind of cool. Although you know, I think the whole Manning brothers thing is getting to be a little bit overdone. This last year, I don't know if you watched it, the All Star
Yeah. Yep.
football thing. Yeah, Peyton was the coach of one, and Eli was the coach of the other.
The format was actually kind of unique, right? The tug of
Mm-hmm.
wars and
Oh
the
yeah,
different skill stuff. I thought was really cool. But now that you have the Manning cast on Monday Night Football, and then the Manning, like you said, the Manning brothers heads up in the coaching thing,
yeah.
it is time for a little bit of a change. As much as I love Peyton Manning, you know me,
Oh,
but it is nice to see just different representation, should we say, to
yeah,
be a part of
absolutely.
these games as well. Well,
Agreed.
Gully, to celebrate our 5th episode, I know, such a milestone, guys. Hey, it's the small things in life, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
We figured we would do something with the number 5, and that is going to be list our top 5 worst fans. No, I'm just kidding. We will do some of our top 5 rankings, and maybe we can start out with since we kind of did a little bit of football here, and we do have a little bit of basketball at the end, so we'll kind of keep it on the football topic, and we'll ease into it on this one. Give me your 5 first, and then I'll give you my 5. And if you
Okay.
can do your best to rank them in order, if you want to go 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, that is up to you.
Okay.
Your running backs of all time.
All right. Are you sure about this? I'm
Let's
pretty
give it
sure
a whirl.
people are going to be up in arms, I think, by my list. But here it goes. All right. Number 5th overall, I have LaDainian Tomlinson.
LT.
Yep.
Okay. The Charger.
Yep. My uh, kind of winging it here a little bit. My 4th
Sure.
all time is Adrian Peterson.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Uh, 3rd all time. It's probably a little different than what we were talking about, a few episodes back when we did some things about running backs. But I'm going with Earl Campbell.
Okay. Very solid. Yep.
Yep.
Sure.
And then number 2 overall is Sweetness.
Walter Payton.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my number 1 running back of all time, drumroll, is Barry
Rest
Sanders.
in peace, O.J. Simpson. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely not.
All right, state that again for the people that I talked in front of you.
Yeah, it was Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders, number 1. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't actually, believe it or not, we don't differ that much, but a little bit. And then when we get done with this, we can bash each other a little bit here.
Right on.
My number 5 is Emmitt Smith.
What? I'm just kidding.
No way. My number 4 is LaDainian Tomlinson.
Okay, right on.
My number 3 is Walter Sweetness.
Interesting. Okay.
My number 2 is all day Adrian Peterson. and
Okay.
we share the same number one in Barry Sanders.
Interesting.
Now,
So
go
let me.
ahead on. Let's see why you think this and that.
Okay. So here is actually the funny thing because I kind of switched up my lineup there right before I said it. How I actually have it written down is LaDainian Tomlinson 5, Earl Campbell 4, Walter Payton 3, AP number 2, and Barry Sanders number 1.
Okay, so the top three were pretty much on point.
Yeah.
So I have Emmett at 5.
Yep.
And I know he has the most yards rushing of all time. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
couple of Super Bowls behind his belt.
Yep.
He has a very long career,
Mm-hmm.
but he also played behind one of the best offensive lines ever.
Absolutely. Yep.
The reason I have him at 5 is mostly because the longevity and was still successful or productive continuing on even into the Arizona years. So
Sure. Yep.
it's
I'll
hard
give you
to
that.
disregard a guy that is that far. I shouldn't say far ahead, but he is kind of far ahead in the all time rushing yards list. He did play a lot of years, but nobody faults Jerry Rice for having all them yards either. So
Right.
I'm going to give that nod to Emmett.
No, I'd like to say something bad about Emmett, but the thing of it is so you know watching Emmett when I was growing up there, he was actually one of the tougher running backs that I've ever seen. He had multiple seasons where he had issues with his shoulders. Like
Mm-hmm.
he would come down on the ball and he would dislocate a shoulder, and he wouldn't miss a game. Yeah, he might have missed a few plays, but I mean he would just play through the pain and just keep going. You
Sure.
know, I mean
Yeah.
just and you can't fault the guy for that. I mean, having the fortune of playing on the team that had what could be probably the best offensive line of all time, uh, but he took advantage of it, right?
Sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
he also had the benefit of playing, in the '90s where it was just when the quarterbacks were kind of taking over, right? 30
Yep.
touchdowns in a season was considered, phenomenal back then,
Right.
and so I mean the era that he played in and the offensive line, that, but I'm not going to discredit him. He took advantage of everything he got. Yeah.
Sure. So what was the reason that Earl Campbell made this list for you and got the nod ahead of Emmett?
So Earl Campbell. So I watched him when I was obviously even younger, right? Because Earl Campbell was in the late '70s there.
There's not many years left here, Chad. You know.
But uh, he was just a bruiser. I mean, he is like the quintessential player who ran with reckless abandon. He gave up his body, and if you see him today, I mean, he is in a wheelchair. He just took a beating, and he
Literally
delivered
gave up his
beatings.
body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just yeah, and also being he was not as big as say Jerome Bettis, but he was big guy, physical, and just yeah, he was by far my favorite player growing up. I mean, so I have a little bit of a bias there, but I think if you could have extrapolated his career, say over the average of say
Sure.
10, 12 years, yeah, I think he would have numbers to compete with all these guys for sure.
Now the controversy I think that we might get from some of the comment section is why not Jim Brown?
Sure.
Do you want to take your answer on this one first?
Sure. Uh, so one of the things about Jim Brown, um, he really was kind of like a man among boys when it came to the running back position, right? And he was just so much faster, more powerful than any other player that pretty much anybody had seen at the time. Now, I don't think that that should discredit him from being in the top five, but
Not at all.
at the same time, um, the era, if we moved him into one of our more current eras, right, where football players work out all year round and are, physical specimens, I'm not so sure that he would be able to do what he did. He was the physical specimen back then. Back then,
Right.
most guys had part time jobs in the off season,
Yeah.
you know, and so I don't know. I That would be, I guess, my only knock is just you know the period at which he played. But other than that,
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that too. The rebuttal would be, well, but back then they didn't really have a passing game, so everybody fought the run, and he would
true.
be um, targeted a little bit more from the defense to stop the run, and he still bulldozed and had such a great career.
Yep.
But again, the same thing as what you said is he's a man among boys. He was beyond his time,
Hmm.
and he's also not facing the Lawrence Taylors, the Ray Lewises, the Brian Urlachers, the big run
Right.
stuffing defensive linemen, right? Like you
Yep.
said, these guys are probably postal workers and and ice cream truck drivers, in the off season where
Yep.
they're just not built like they were back then. And again, it has not his fault that that's when he was born and played, but
Sure.
I when you try to measure it up and recalculate, everything, I that's why I have him left off the list, and it's not no discredit to him.
Absolutely not. Yep. I agree with you.
Um, LT was to me probably the most dynamic dual threat running back, and we'll see maybe at the end of Christian McCaffrey's career how he can hold up. He's had some injuries.
Yep.
Obviously, for now, I'm just going to leave him off the list. But LT had so many wonderful seasons, had some great teams, but he was able to do it all. And I think he still had like 7 or 8 or 9 throwing touchdowns, a lot of receiving touchdowns. So it wasn't just running. He
Yeah.
could catch the ball better than probably anyone that played running back.
Yeah. He's got to be right up there as far as pass catching running backs. I mean, overall, he was. You're right. Just so dynamic, electric. Um, and not only that, but I mean, he was able to really put up big stats for a San Diego team that wasn't necessarily all that good, except for almost what he could do for them, right? I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I just thought he was electric. The only other player I would say that, as far as on my list goes, that I could maybe possibly interchange him would be oh gosh, I had him on just on the top of my head here. Running back from St. Louis or St. Louis Rams.
Marshall Falk.
Yes, Marshall Falk.
I
Marshall
I
Falk
I
was very
have him.
dynamic as well.
Yep, I have him in my top 10. Probably near the 10 mark though. Just I think, like you said with Campbell, Eric Dickerson, OJ Simpson, I don't think he beats those guys on the list yet, and probably even Jim Brown. And then you got Falk about 10.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, that's a tough list to beat, and to be in the top 10, I think is, quite an achievement anyway.
yeah,
To be on my top 10, you guys should be thankful is what I'm saying. And so people are probably going to give us flack because, well, you guys are Minnesota guys, and you see, you picked Adrian Peterson. Well, I'll tell you why. Number one, the guy's a monster. He's a physical
hmm
specimen that, I mean, he came off an ACL injury in week 16, I think, against the Redskins,
hmm
and came back, and he should have actually been ready to play week 1, but the coach held him out, and then didn't play much in the first 4 games and still topped 2,000 yards. If he really played
yeah.
those first 4 games, he could have got 2,200 yards.
Oh yeah,
But he was held out, and he did that off a ACL. And I know
Yep.
The medicals, doctors, and stuff are much better nowadays, but they still have to recover and train.
Yep.
Not many
Absolutely.
people are still doing that. And the guy, but we got to see him every single week at his best or at his worst, but we got to see him every single week. So there is a little bit of bias in there, but we got to also dissect his game a little bit more to decide if we think he's going to be up in that category or not. And I mean, he physically took that 2012 team to the playoffs and found
Hmm.
out that, you know, the guy's just a stud.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's not much I can add to that. I mean, considering the games that he set the record for, the most rushing yards in a game against San Diego.
As a
I mean,
rookie.
yeah, it's just, I mean, and then how he used to just spank the Bears every time, especially in Soldier Field. He would just run them over.
It was almost 200 yards a game. And
Yeah,
even the Packers for a couple of years was about 200 yards a game.
yeah. I mean, yeah. He
As
was a
much as
great
you could,
player, special player. What
yeah,
he's like almost one of those kind of guys that is almost like generational players, right? At least for your team, right? I'm not
yeah,
gonna.
right.
I would say even for just the NFL in general. I mean, you don't see too many people like Adrian Peterson that could take the beating. Speaking of, right, when we
Yeah.
talked about Earl Campbell and taking the beating and his body just breaking down, Adrian Peterson took the beating, delivered the beating as well, and
And
he
I think
just still went out there.
I think the guy's almost 40 years old if he's not, and could probably still suit up today. And I think that's just, it's immaculate for a quarterback or a kicker to even play at 40 years old because
Right,
I'm about to be 40 and getting
breaking
up
down, are you?
hurts. Yeah. Tying my shoes, I pull a muscle,
Yeah.
you know? So for these guys to do that is pretty remarkable. And then, I don't know how do you not put Barry up at number one. I mean, I'm sure there's everyone's got their own opinions for it, but the guy was so dynamic just with his running skills to stop on a dime, to turn and juke. And
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what I was going to say. That's the reason why I put him number one. Is I think athletically, um, there
as a
we've
pure
never
runner,
seen
right?
anybody quite like him. Maybe you might get some people that might say Gale Sayers was kind of close to him in you know skill level, being able to juke guys out. Um, but Barry Sanders, I mean, if you were to add up the negative yards that he did trying to juke people out,
Right.
yeah, I mean, hell, he might be right on top of Emmett as far as the most yards gained.
I
You
mean,
know,
he never had less than 1,000 yards, I think, or
Mm-mm.
and very few, I think, were even like under like 1,300, and it's just
Yeah,
remarkable.
yep. Well,
So, guy,
if he would have kept playing that last year,
yeah,
he would have beat Brown and held the rushing record before Emmett.
I mean, the guy retired too early for whatever reasons that he had, and if he could have held,
Mm-hmm.
just managed, maybe like you said, maybe 2 more years. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
Emmett would have been able to even catch him for how long that he had played, but the yards per game and the yards per season that he had is it's tough to beat, man. The guy
Yeah.
is so fun, I think there was an Amazon documentary about him, which is really good. I don't know if it was like a day in the life of Barry or what it was called, but or maybe it's just called Barry, but it was really cool. It's a really cool story. So I think you guys should check that out as well. But I know you guys are going to have a little bit different opinions than we are. So just let us know what you guys have for your top five, and maybe our opinions are dog shit, but who cares? It's my opinion.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed.
So the next top five, are you ready for this one?
Absolutely.
Would you like to go number one or number two?
I'll go two.
You go two. Okay. So, this is going to be your best quarterbacks to not win a Super Bowl.
Okay.
Okay, to not win a Super Bowl. And my number 5, I have Jim Kelly. Went to 4 straight.
Yep.
Was a leader of a great Buffalo team for all them years. Held all of his shit together. Not that it mattered, but battled cancer and had a really nice recovery. I think he's still doing pretty well off of it. I don't know if
Yeah,
he
I think
came
so
back
too.
for a little bit, but um, he had a tough life. But I'm giving him the nod at number 5 for all them great Buffalo years that he had. Number 4 and 3 can definitely be interchanged, so I don't really care if you guys decide to put him 3 or 4. But I'm going to put Phillip Rivers at number 4
Okay.
and Matt Ryan at number 3. And
Okay.
Matt Ryan, because he did get to the big game. I know he blew a big lead, but that to me was more coaching and the New England defense than it was on Matt Ryan or on Tom Brady. And Phillip Rivers just couldn't muster it up, but he was probably one of the best regular season quarterbacks to ever play.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Number 2, Fran Tarkenton.
Okay.
Did he? Gosh, even as a Vikings fan, but obviously I wasn't even alive back then. Did he play in all 4 Super Bowls, or was he only in the 3? I can't remember.
I think he was just in the three. It was still even as far as old as I am. I still think it was only three with Minnesota, but he might have played one with the Giants.
Um, and he was kind of the first to be that scrambling, dynamic quarterback. He's still talked about today. He's an icon in Minnesota, and it might be a little favoritism, but I don't know how you can really go against the guy. And number 1 is Dan Marino. The guy was just ahead of his time, went to a Super Bowl his second year, passed for 5,000 yards. No one accomplished it until almost 30 years after. So
Yep.
I it's hard to, for me, take away that from those guys. I mean, Marino is talked about highly amongst his peers of being, even one of the best quarterbacks to play, let alone not to get a ring. So
Sure.
I'm going to go by their judgment as well. But to watch him, he would be so fun to watch in today's passing game as well. He'd probably break 6,000.
Yeah, Dan Marino. If Dan Marino
Yeah,
was in his prime in today's NFL, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
What do you got there, Gully?
All right. So there's a couple of similarities in our lists. Um, you got me kind of doubting my number 5 pick, but here goes. So my number 5 pick is Andrew Luck.
Okay,
I thought Andrew
okay.
Luck was a fantastic player. Always performed, carried his team on his back, even when he didn't have great talent around him. Uh, yeah, I would have liked to see him get a crack at one. And obviously, he retired early too,
I
so
like
that
I like the surprise 5. That one took me off guard a little bit.
yeah, you had me kind of thinking. You had me kind of thinking of putting Philip Rivers in there on the fly, you, but I really admired Andrew Luck. I just thought he was a really tough player.
Yeah.
Um, my next pick is Donovan McNabb.
Okay.
Right, but
Sure.
he went to what, three straight championship games, NFC championship games, and then one Super Bowl, or
3 straight losses, and then the fourth was the Super Bowl. So I think he went to 4 straight.
yeah.
But yeah,
So, um, but yeah, so he's probably the now as an overall quarterback of all time. It's kind of tough for me to probably put Luck and McNabb up there, but I think that they had legit shots that they could have gone to the Super Bowl
fair
um,
enough.
and potentially won. Right, they were
Mc, Mc,
successful.
I'll give you McNabb too. I did not even consider Andrew Luck. Not saying that's a bad pick at all. I did have McNabb as an honorable mention though, so I did write him down.
Okay.
primarily because of those that huge successful span of years that he had.
Right.
I know the end of his career was pretty crummy, but that's not the best way to remember his career by. He was
Yeah.
quite a ball player.
Yeah. Don't remember his career in purple. Um,
Do not.
so speaking of purple, my number three is Fran Tarkington,
Okay.
and you almost kind of had to. I mean, up until you know Marino and Elway, uh, really Fran Tarkenton kind of held all the records, right? And went to I'm pretty sure it was only three Super Bowls, but um, yeah, and not winning one. I mean, there's not much more you can say about that. And
Right.
then my number two is Jim Kelly. Now Jim
Okay.
Kelly, I same thing like Donovan McNabb. They 4 amazing years, right? Took his team to the Super Bowl 4 straight years, which is an amazing feat in itself, right?
I still call that Buffalo team. I know you have to win to be considered a dynasty.
Yeah,
I still think that 4 straight years of being in the Super Bowl
yeah,
to me has to be considered some sort of dynasty. I don't care if you call it negative or not. That is such a great run.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. First off, just to have a team go to back Super Bowls is incredible. To be able to do it 4 in a row. Yeah, granted they lost all four, but still
I know. That's so
to
bad.
to to recover from that hangover, right, of
And to come
losing
back.
and to keep coming back, is a testament to one, how good Jim Kelly was, how good just the team in general was, with Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, list goes on, plus I'm drawing a blank. Uh, is it Levy, the coach?
Marv Levy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of Hall of Famers on that team. And last and definitely not least is obviously Dan Marino. Dan Marino, I mean, I remember that Super Bowl when he played against the 49ers, and it was almost without question, everybody thought he was going to be back. And it just never worked out that way, you know?
And not necessarily does it fall on his shoulders. I mean, you need a
True.
full organization, and every NFL player will tell you that you need a great defense, you need a great line, you need a great kicker, you need a great coaching staff.
Yep.
Everything has to fall in place, and it just didn't for him.
Right.
Throughout a lot of his career, and like you said, for Buffalo to get there once, let alone 4 times and in a row, also took away from Marino's success when he had
Mm-hmm.
to go and fight them in the same division all them years.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that wasn't an easy battle for him, but yeah, it's tough to take away that from him. So
Right.
um, I did have also on my honorable mentions, and I just wasn't sure if I could put him in there. Was Steve McNair and
Yes.
Warren Moon.
So Steve McNair probably doesn't rake up there as high as Warren Moon does for me. I think Warren Moon uh, he was a fantastic quarterback, and he came close back in the day with Houston. And he had a good run even here with the Vikes, but yeah, I think he had all the talent in the world to probably be able to succeed had they had just one or two more pieces probably with each franchise that he was with.
Do you think? I don't think that would be part of it, but do you think he was too much of a journeyman, Warren Moon? Because the list of teams that he had played on is a little longer than your average starting quarterback.
But
That was
wasn't
so
that
good
more
that
at
was
the
he.
end of his career though?
I mean, perhaps I know he was notorious for the Oilers,
Yeah.
and played what 1 or 2 seasons with Minnesota. maybe
Yep.
three tops, I think, but
Yeah, I
never a
think you're
full
right. I think it was
16.
two.
And then he had Kansas City, he had Seattle. Um,
Yep.
who else was I missing in there? But yeah, he did bounce around a little bit, and that, if he would have stuck with longer, or maybe his time was up in Houston and then he became the journeyman. But
Maybe.
he did get a late start to the NFL too because he played in the Canadian Football League for so long.
Correct. Yep.
So yeah, I mean he played into his 40s and had some nice years too.
Yep.
Um, okay, well
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good list. I really surprised me on the Andrew Luck, and I don't disagree with you on there. Definitely would have been fun to see him play a few more years at least to see if he could get the job done and then
Yeah.
make a
Same.
decision on it. But um, I mean, he made a choice for himself, and
Yep.
if that's what he decides, I mean, how do you hate the guy for it? You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost kind of like the same thing that Robert Smith did with the Vikes, right? Had a
Yeah,
couple knee injuries, but very smart guy. He he wanted to keep his smarts later in life,
yeah,
right? Yeah. It's
yeah.
just. Uh, so I mean, you can't fault guys for doing that. I mean, you get in, make your money, and get out, and still be able to live a good, long, healthy life. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right. Especially when the CTE is so powerful nowadays, and we've
right?
seen,
Yep,
how it really affects people.
yep.
Um, this next one, this is the last football one that we're going to do. And we're going to stay on the topic of quarterbacks, but this one's a little bit different. This one is going to be in your eyes, the most overrated quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl.
Okay,
Okay. I'm going
yep.
to go first. I'm going to give you my list on this one.
All right.
Um, no, you go.
All right. You want me to go, huh?
You go. Yeah, you
All
go.
right.
I just feel like mine's going to be more controversial, so it'll be more fresh to talk about afterwards.
Well, all right. So if there's any Chicago Bear fans, I think my list may be more controversial. But
Oh, okay.
all right, my number five most overrated quarterback is Jim McMahon to win a Super
Okay.
Bowl.
Okay. All right. All right.
So reason why I say that, just he had a lot of help. He had one of the best running backs of all time. Had uh, pretty amazing defense. Right, one of the best defensive, if not the best defense of
Right.
all time.
Everyone's always compared to the '85 Bears.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, because he was never really able to quite reach that echelon, and he never was really a guy who put up good numbers. If you
Right.
just take a look overall for a career,
Right.
I mean, I believe the Chicago Bears still don't have a 30 touchdown passer.
Or 4,000 yards.
Yeah,
It's just phenomenal that neither has happened.
yeah,
Sorry, guys.
yeah. Uh, so my fourth most overrated quarterback to win a Super Bowl is Mark Ripien.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's luck that he came to the Super Bowl and got his only Super Bowl win. Even though he was MVP of that game, I still I still think there was a little bit of luck played into that. And he just never he was an okay quarterback after that, but I mean nothing impressive.
Hmm.
Um, so my next one is this one kind of goes back a little ways as well. Jeff Hostetler.
Okay.
So playing as a
Might
backup to Phil Simms.
I was gonna say you might have to tell some of these young guns.
Yeah. So Phil Simms was the starting quarterback for the New York Giants, and he got hurt, and Jeff Hostetler essentially brought him to the Super Bowl and got them. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl, but I think really a lot of that laid on. Phil Simms earlier in the season, and they just had a really good core of running backs, and they had a killer defense with Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so. He's my number third
Okay.
overall.
All right.
Two overall is Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
Similar situation. Uh, Starting quarterback got injured. He came in and he took him, but I still think that, even after that season, got the big contract, and just never lived up to the label. He couldn't do it, and
Yeah.
uh, just happened to be at right place, right time. Is kind of how I look at that.
Okay.
And then of course, most people would probably agree with me on this. Number one, Trent Dilfer.
Trent Dilfer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, basically could throw a 10 yard out and that's about it. And took his. He was a manager. I mean, in that
Yeah.
year that they won, he was just a manager.
Again, talk
Just
about one of the best defenses.
yep. Well, not to mention, uh, you know, I'm drawing a blank on their running back too. They had a pretty good running back, um, but it's
Was that
just
Jamal Lewis at the time?
I think it was, or maybe that might have been before him. But either way, I think they had a good running back, and he was just a manager. He didn't turn the ball over. That was his main goal, right? Let the defense do the work and keep the games close. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fault them for the game plan, right? But
Right.
it's kind of like you know he didn't have to impress anybody.
You could have
To
probably plugged in almost anybody. But then the team, so
right.
the documentary, they got rid of him that off season. Who did they bring in? Was it Elvis Gerbach, or they brought in another
Oh,
passer and
yeah,
didn't even get close? I don't think.
right. Yeah, I think
But
you're right.
but at that Super Bowl against the Giants, which they shut out the Vikings, we don't need to bring that up. They they were actually shutting out. They Baltimore almost shut out the Giants, but they returned the kickoff after halftime, and that was the only
Right.
points that they had gotten. And that was such a big ordeal to them that they couldn't get the shutout, and that was the only thing that got by.
Yep.
And even some of the defensive players were pissed because they weren't actually on the field when that had happened. Okay, I took a completely different approach to this type of question. Um, However, my number 5 I have is Nick Foles. And very similar to your type of reasoning, he got into the right place at the right time. He sucked throughout most of the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, he just went loose against the Vikings and then had a great Super Bowl against New England.
Yep.
So I don't know what kind of happened with that. And then went terrible again. So, yeah, I just got Nick Foles at 5. This is where it gets dicey, and I'm probably going to take a lot of flack for it. And no, I didn't pick Joe Flacco. I picked Big Ben
Roethlisberger, huh?
Roethlisberger. And the reason I have Ben Roethlisberger in here is he has like the 2 worst quarterback performances in the Super Bowl of all time. In both Super Bowls he played in are like considered one of the worst. And 99% of the time they give the Super Bowl MVP to the quarterback. He has 0. Okay. He has 2 Super Bowl rings, no Super Bowl MVPs. He just didn't play well. Not that he's a good he's a great quarterback in the regular season. He's a great quarterback throughout some of the playoffs, but in the Super Bowl itself, he got a lot more credit than he deserved to win those 2 championship games. So that's why he's at my number 4. And I'm kind of sticking with a little bit of a theme here with that. All right.
Well, I'll give you some flack on that. I think that's kind of a bad call, only because uh, without without Big Ben, they never would have even been in the Super Bowl. I mean, in our neck of the woods, it seems like the Steelers get a lot of play on TV for us, and I mean, the guy could make a play happen out of four guys draped across him, and still
Yeah,
turn it into a positive yards.
he's a big
I
boy. I mean, I'm not saying that he's a bad player. I just think he didn't deserve those wins, and therefore, in my eyes, he was a little overrated. All right.
Okay, all right,
Well, we got three more, so buckle up.
yeah, nice.
um, the next one at number 3, I have Terry Bradshaw, another Steeler legend, another icon. But if you look at his passing, he's almost no better than Christian Ponder in his career. It's like the same QBR, the same yards per game. He got carried by his defense, and he did get 2 Super Bowl MVPs, but for what? I just don't think that no one views him as a top 5 quarterback or a top 10 quarterback ever in the NFL, and the guy has 4 Super Bowl rings. So that kind of being said, I think as far as overrated go, when people are viewing you as such a highly touted player, I don't think that you're living up to those types of standards.
Um, okay. Um, so, so I can't. I'm not going to argue with you that much on it. Um, Other than the fact that it was a different era, right? This was before
Yeah,
the passing era.
right.
This was still back in that, your running backs were your bread and butter. That's
Yep.
how, they
Franco
had
Harris,
Franco
you had
Harris.
Lynn
They had,
Swan, the steel curtain defense.
yeah,
I
uh,
mean, he did have some really nice surroundings as well, where I feel like he just had to be a game manager for that. He had to be a Trent Dilfer, but he got a little bit more credit than Trent Dilfer did. Okay, all right, number 2. Maybe you think this way, maybe you don't. Troy Aikman,
um, overrated, you say?
overrated. Yes, I don't think maybe he got 1 Super Bowl MVP. I'm trying to think.
I can look it up. I actually have it over
I
here.
think he has one. Emmett has one, and then who was it? Was it
Yeah,
Darren Woodson has the third one? It was a defensive
yeah.
player.
Aikman has the MVP in '92. Their first.
And again, he was in the right system. He had the right teammates. He had the right line. He had a running back. He had some wide receivers. He had a coach. He had a defense. He had everything. And then you look at his numbers, and he's like what, number 25th overall in passing yards all time. He just
Yeah.
doesn't live up to anything. It was just, yeah, you were on the team and you were the starting quarterback, and so we're just going to ride it because we have a dynasty.
Yep. I
Now,
You're
it
not probably
oh
going to get me to argue too much about that. I mean, because of the team that they had. They did not have as good of a defense, say, as the previous teams we mentioned, the Baltimore Ravens and
yeah,
Pittsburgh Steelers. But they also had Emmett Smith. They also had Michael Irvin. Um, they had a nice cast around him. So
yeah.
it's for
Now,
being a three-time Super
if
Bowl, now it's kind of both
okay, so
him.
if he didn't win and Buffalo won some of theirs,
Hmm.
would I say the same about Jim Kelly, and would Troy Aikman be on the list of no Super Bowl wins? Would he be on the quarterback list of no Super Bowl wins? I don't know.
I
I
don't think
don't
you
know
would.
if I would put the Troy Aikman on there, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see, like, I think Tony Romo's a better quarterback than Troy Aikman, and Troy Aikman has more rings. So I don't just view it as rings only.
No, I get what you're saying. Um, but that the one thing about the quarterback position, I mean, is uh, they're essentially like the field general.
Yeah.
So without their play, they aren't going to win, right? So they have to play. They have to play well enough to be able to get their team there. right? Because if they play bad, they're not getting there, right?
Well, and he did stay healthy enough during those Super Bowl runs to where they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to risk it with a backup quarterback. And it would have been interesting to see if they could have won with a backup quarterback. You know, it's like the Drew Brees and Tom Brady aspect. Would one have taken over the other just because of that and then ridden that team forever, right?
So you kind of wish Whiskey Wade Wilson might have got a shot.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And number one, this is going to take a lot of flack, but speaking of Wilson, Russell Wilson is my number one overrated quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Boo, boo. Yeah, I can hear them
I,
all right now. The
you
tomatoes are
know,
flying at me right now.
see, maybe me and you think a little bit too much alike. I can't really fault you for that one either. Um, but I really do think that early on in his career, he was, uh, I think, obviously he's declined, right? I mean,
Yeah,
as evidence of his stint in Denver. Um, but I think, you know, yeah, I you could probably get me to buy into that argument as well. That
I,
it
I
was, it's
mean,
another. It seems like as far as like your list goes, and a little bit of even my list, it seems like the overrated quarterbacks. The common theme is having a great defense.
a great defense.
If you don't
And
have that great defense,
right.
you're going to need the quarterback play to really get you
But
there.
there's a lot of quarterbacks that have won because of great defenses, but to me they just weren't overrated as far as like their time play. I As much as people think that I hate Tom Brady, I actually considered putting him on this list.
Yeah,
Boo, tomatoes are flying at me again.
yeah,
But
you're correct.
he had so many top 5 defenses in his career that again, he just had to be a game manager. Drew Bledsoe came in when he was injured and won the AFC Championship game and brought them to the Super Bowl, and they started Tom Brady and he got 150 yards passing and the Super Bowl MVP because his defense got a pick six. So
Is
I
that
just
really
don't.
how
That
it
was against
happened?
the Rams. That was against the Rams. Fact
Uh,
check. Fact check. It's okay.
okay.
Um,
Uh,
so
uh,
I I don't think Tom Brady is an overrated quarterback, so I didn't put him on the list. But as far as like to win a Super Bowl or how you won a Super Bowl, that is kind of how we differed a little bit. Um,
sure.
but with Russell Wilson, I think when you saw the defense when the Legion of Boom was kind of dismantled a little bit, you didn't see him really take off in the playoffs or be productive or get to the playoffs much. He tried to scramble a lot, but I think we saw the true Russell Wilson without having that type of carry behind him. And maybe quarterbacks play a little bit more loose when they know they have such a defense, or like a pitcher has when they have a lead, they can play pitch a little bit more loose than play tight. But I just don't feel that with Russell Wilson and the decline over the years. He still had, I mean, he had Marshawn Lynch and he didn't have the greatest receivers, but he also didn't pass for 4,500 yards either, you
Right.
know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I get exactly what you're saying. But he also was one of the, I think, precursors to essentially like the modern running quarterback, right?
Fairly, yeah. I mean,
I mean, he didn't score a lot of
he
touchdowns, but he made a lot of
he's
things happen with his legs.
yes. He scrambled, I feel like, when he had to, but not necessarily a running quarterback like Lamar Jack, like designated runs or like a Vic or Lamar. But now you don't really see scrambles almost like a Mahomes behind the line and not really gaining much as positive yards. It's just kind of to buy time and extend the play.
Okay,
And then,
so
some
in that
happens there.
first Super Bowl year,
Yeah.
Bledsoe played 2 games. And he was 0-2. Brady played 14 games and was 11-3.
And then it went to the AFC Championship game. Brady got hurt. Bledsoe came in and saved the day. And then in that Super Bowl against the Rams, I believe he passed for like 152 yards
Okay,
and got the
so
MVP.
all
And
right,
half of those yards were in the last 3 minutes to kick a field goal, which is just insane.
all right. Well, that you're probably right about that, but I thought you had mentioned that Bledsoe had.
Oh, no, he came in. No, I was just saying he came in the AFC Championship game and kind of saved. And then, so you could have ridden one or the other, but who really was the savior on it was probably the defense. Is kind of what we the main theme behind it. I think the difference between our lists on this was um, I went a little bit more of more powerful quarterbacks that had won versus just quarterbacks that won. So I guess it kind of depends on um, your opinion of how far of overrated might it be. So and there's no right or wrong on it. This is why we debate it, and
Oh no, I'm
people
right.
people just see us agree all the time.
But yeah, yeah. Let me see here.
But I will wait for the comments to erupt on that one. They're going to be, you don't know ball. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
both. Yeah, they're probably going to
Tomatoes.
be like, both of you are cracked.
Yeah. You proved all your fans correct
I did,
that you
huh?
know that you know some football today.
All two of them.
Okay, I'll stop commenting. Well, guys, we're going to wrap that up. We did extend this a little longer than we wanted to. We do have some more stuff, so we're going to save that and shoot that here coming up soon. But thanks for tuning in, and we love you. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, the share, tell your friends,
Yep.
and it does nothing but help support us, and we love it for it. So
Yep. Tell your neighbors too, even if you don't like them.